Hey, it's Andrew, and Happy New Year. I hope you're all having a great start to the year. Today on the show, we have Casey Graham, CEO and founder of Gravy, a subscription payment recovery service that helps companies fight involuntary churn. We talked about how Casey's experience with bad customer churn inspired him to start Gravy, the main reasons for failed payments in SaaS businesses, and why Casey thinks a hands-on human approach is the best way to fight churn. We also dived into the different kinds of buyer personas Gravy has identified for their business, why slowing down their onboarding process helped them increase their customer lifetime value, and the importance of having a champion within their customer's company. As usual, I'm excited to hear what you think of this episode, and if you have any feedback, I would love to hear from you. You can email me directly on andrew@churn.fm. Now enjoy the episode.
How do you build a habit-forming product?
You need to invest.
And we saw these different...
You don't just gun for revenue in the door.
This is CHURN.fm, the podcast for subscription economy pros. Each week, we hear how the world's fastest growing companies are tackling churn and using retention to fuel their growth.
How do you build a habit-forming product?
We crossed over that magic threshold to negative churn.
You need to invest in customer success.
It always comes down to retention and engagement.
Completely bootstrap, profitable and growing.
Strategies, tactics, and ideas brought together to help your business thrive in the subscription economy. I'm your host, Andrew Michael, and here's today's episode. Hey, Casey, welcome to the show.
What's up, Andrew? How you doing today?
I'm doing a lot better after that welcome I got for you now. I think for the listeners, to be a little bit relevant, but Casey greeted me with the most amazing welcome from the team, and they popped some fireworks, not fireworks, but some crackers in the office, and all said hello. So it was really, really great remote hello. So thanks for that, Casey. It's great to have you.
Absolutely. We love to do a big celebration virtually because we feel like virtual culture doesn't get celebrated as much as in-person culture. So we just wanted to say hello and welcome to Gravy.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And for the listeners, Casey obviously is the founder and CEO of Gravy. And Gravy is a subscription payment recovery service powered by people and amplified by software. Gravy has helped customers recover over $28 million in failed payments since launching in April 2017. And prior to Gravy, Casey started and sold two companies that both shared an issue with payment failures and recovery. So my first question for you, Casey, is what made you focus on the very specific problem of payment failures?
The number one thing that when we had the last company that I was in and the CEO of, and we were growing, is that we had a private equity group call and they wanted to buy our business. And they sent us a big number of how much they wanted to pay. And we said, great, let's go into due diligence. And in due diligence, they essentially walked us through the first time I'd ever heard of the thing called a churn waterfall. Have you ever heard of a churn waterfall, I'm sure?
Yep.
And so on the churn waterfall, they started pointing out all of these issues and problems, and they decreased their offer 4x from coming in the door to leaving the door because of looking at churn and looking at the risk associated to buying the business and those kind of things. And so it was a wake-up call because all I focused on was marketing and sales and growing the top line revenue and those kind of things. But then we got maniacal. We got super focused over a 2-year period on closing the back door of that business. And then 2 years later, that same company, because we closed the back door and we fixed the churn problem, they bought us for 4x what the first time offer was. So it was literally a crazy turn of events. And I just realized, crap, this isn't like fixing some little thing where, you bring customers back, or this isn't even about, you get LTV. Even the bigger picture of this is the value of the organization is only worth what it's worth in the future to somebody else if you're going to sell your organization or if you're even going to keep it. And so this is a huge issue. And so we said, hey, let's just focus on that. And that's all we do. And it's all we focus on every single day. We just passed over 2 million interactions. We've had 2 million personalized interactions via email, phone, text, Facebook Messenger, or whatever method in the last 30 months at this point. And from that, we've just seen and learned a lot about what's happening with churn and people falling off and people coming back.
That's incredible. And I definitely echo, I think Thomas Tungus as well had a look at the correlating factors of B2B SaaS valuations and found that the number one impacting factor when it came to valuations was revenue retention. So it's amazing to see how you really doubled down on that and were able to see a 4x and now taking that into the new business. So you mentioned you've had over 2 million interactions so far. Correct me if I was wrong, but can you walk us through what does that mean? Like, what is the business exactly? What do you do?
So a lot of businesses, we focus on businesses that are they have over $250,000 in revenue, and they're growing. So it's not like startups with an idea. It's people that have a product and it's growing over 250 annual revenue, and they're subscription based, e-learning, online courses, SaaS. Those are our three big industries that we're in. And what we essentially do is when people are on payment plans or credit, they have credit cards on file, is that it's called involuntary churn. Their card doesn't work, and it doesn't work for one of 200 different weird bank reasons, right? And so whether it be insufficient funds or whether it be an administrative issue or whatever. And so what we do is we partner with companies and we do the recovery process for the company. And so as soon as the credit card fails in one of our customers' companies, we have nice, friendly, smiling, individualized people that reach out individually, personalized, and connect with that customer who had a credit card failure. And we tell them specifically why their card failed. We tell them specifically what they're missing out on. And we try to win that customer back in real time, all the time. And we run a 60-day follow-up process, because most people, if after like 7 to 10 days, they kind of let them off the hook. But we stay with every single transaction. If it's a $99 a month SaaS company that has a failed customer, we will try to recover that customer over a 60-day process using email, using text, using phone, using social media or whatever, to bring that customer back so that they pay the company and they get back on board with the company. Now, the unique part of this is we act as if we are an extension of our clients. And so nobody knows Gravy exists in the market that we're reaching out to. We're not a third party. We do this process for the company and act like we are the company, and we treat them with the values of those companies, and we win customers back every single month to companies, and that's what we do.
It's very, very interesting. And I love one of the lines on your site as well. It says, "Dunning software can't care." So the side to this as well, like as you're highlighting now, I think is really taking that personal approach. And I think what's really interesting is because actually before joining Hotjar, I had a case where I was at the end of a startup. We had run out of money, and we started receiving all these payment failure notifications. And I think, as you mentioned, like payment failure notifications can come from multiple different reasons. And one of them being actually when you don't have any money in the bank. And what I started to notice was some of the payment failure notifications coming through were rather quite alarming and bright red, your account is about to be canceled. Yep. And actually, and I'm not just saying this because I work at Hotjar now, but one of the very, very few notifications I received was actually from Hotjar, and was from like automation from the CEO at the time, David, basically saying, we know credit card failures can happen for a number of different reasons. We're here to support you. If you have any help, just email me directly and I'll see what we can do to make sure that you get up and running again. And I was really taken back for that, because none of the other companies were doing this, and everyone else really treated it as a transaction as opposed to really an opportunity to interact and to speak to customers. So I'm interested how you actually go about the interactions with customers, how you act as an extension to your customers.
Well, we have technology that plugs into the payment processors and CRMs of our customers. And so we will literally integrate it into their business and running this process. And so, let's just say it's a Stripe customer. As soon as that failure hits, we have a software internally called Biscuits. And so Biscuits will go grab that. It will queue it up for our retention specialist. And then we have inside of our software, it's a logic-based program that says, here's what you do now. And it follows the customer through the journey so that we're able to follow them to know, did they update their payment or did they not? So that's the technology side of it. But the interaction side of it is, we tell them specifically why their card failed. We give them specific what's called stay bonuses to bring them back. We are warm and friendly. It's all real faces and real people. And we treat every single interaction, every single failed customer like it's the only one on earth. the software is what is able to keep us organized and doing it in a methodical way. But the people on top of it are what we're doing is what allows the people to come back. And the way that we found to win customers back, number one is speed. The faster you get to them, the more likely they're to come back. Number two is being specific. Being specific about the product that failed, being specific about why their card failed, being specific about it because they know that it's not just some dunning software. It's like this specifically is communicating to me.
Yeah.
Number three is giving them reasons to come back, not assuming that they care, that they want to come back. We treat it as if it's a sell. Like we're going to try to sell them to get them back. So what does that look like with deadlines and maybe a promotion or a bonus or an add-on or maybe a free month or whatever? So it just depends on the different customer. We do different things. And then the last but not least is just being completely friendly and warm and kind. We found that empathy, being nice to people and understanding them and listening to them is the number one way to win people back to the company. The worst thing you can do is be lying in the sand, bright red, kind of the tactics of a collections agency.
Yeah. And then you mentioned as well, like your typical customers, 250K ARR plus. Was it ARR or MRR? Sorry.
Yeah, that's ARR. And then spanning up to our largest customer has been 120 million ARR. But, it's usually the companies that are growing $1 million to 15 to 20 million. That's usually the clients that we connect with the most.
Okay. And what would their typical account value be then? So when you're having this sort of hands-on experience, what are the contracts that you're looking to try and help recover?
Yeah, so on average, we work mostly with B2B companies. And so usually the transactions are $30 a month or more. So it's usually between $30 and $1,000 a month is where our sweet spot is. And those are the account sizes. Is that what you mean by account size?
Yep. So typically, what are their customers paying them?
Yeah. So on average, between $30 to $299 a month, but the average transaction for us, it pans out about $100 bucks a month.
Okay. And then how are you able as well to sort of scale this experience then when it comes to it? Because it's not a very high account value in terms of having a hands-on experience. Obviously, you mentioned the component to this software and automation, but then actually getting on a call or sending personalized emails out. How is that possible with because I imagine then there must be quite a large volume of customers. Specifically, you mentioned 2 million interactions so far.
Oh yeah. It's a large volume, and that's where I don't believe that technology is the answer to this. I believe it's technology plus having people connect with it, because the technology is what allows us to scale, because it keeps everything organized and on time and tells everybody what to do next, so we don't have to think. But then the people are what make it warm and friendly and fuzzy and a real response. And so it's a mix of both. And so honestly, Andrew, as we've gone out and we've had all these, company growth equity firms want to come in and put money in, all this kind of stuff. And we talk to them, they're like, well, are you a tech company or are you a service? And I'm like, yes, we're both. Yeah. And they hate it. They want the answer to be it's all SaaS tech, or they want it to be you're all service, but we're right in the middle, and we leverage both. And that's how we're able to do this at scale. And our revenue retention is 120%. And our company churn is client churn has only been 1.9%. And so it's very sticky. We're able to handle it. Our client sat just came back, and we're 91 on client sat. And I don't say that to just brag. I say that if we're going to be in this business, doing this for other companies, we better be doing this for our clients. And that's what we do. And that's how we do it.
Awesome. So I'm definitely going to dive into a little bit around how you're doing it yourself specifically, but let's just quickly close off as well on the dunning component. So maybe you want to talk us through sort of the numbers side of things and what you typically see with customers. What percentage of churn is coming from failed payments? What are some of the main reasons behind these failed payments?
Yeah, in the B2B space, bank hold, and then there's funny bank mystery numbers that come through of what the actual thing is that you have to dig down and try to figure out. But bank holds on credit cards, administrative issues, and one of the number one as well is obviously lack of funds. And so I just couldn't believe how much lack of funds was happening. And then as we, in the B2B space, and then as we started thinking about it and we started working with these companies, a lot of these companies have cash flow, but like they just run their credit limit up, or there's a million different reasons why these things happen. And so what we found is one of the best things that we're able to do that Dunning can't do in general is when we're communicating with these customers and they have, the bank fails or they don't have insufficient funds, is that we can create different terms for them. And so we can charge them, if it's $100 a month, we could charge them, $49.97 on the 15th and $49.97 on the 30th or whatever. And we found that doing that is a tactic that just absolutely works. And creating different methods of people to be able to pay has been one of the best tactics that we've been able to use. Did that answer your question? I think I got off topic.
Yeah, no, part of the question is also, I think that the second part then too, that was really around sort of what is the typical percentage you see of churn coming from failed payments when working with these companies?
Yeah, involuntary and voluntary, obviously. So what we found is that the worse the product, the higher the voluntary churn. Like no duh, right?
Yeah.
The better the product, the more their churn is involuntary churn. And so what we've seen as just an average as companies between 3% failure on a month. So if you have 100 subscriptions and you have 3 of them fail, being 3%, up to 15%, those companies are healthy enough for us to be able to work with. Anything over 15 means that they're basically a marketing organization throwing people into a very bad product, and we do not touch that. And anything under 3% means that they really don't have a problem at all, or they're too small to deal with. So that 3 to 15% range is the range that we consider healthy.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I think somebody as well mentioned this to me once before, and maybe you can correct me if it's wrong, but interesting, like most bank cards have an expiry of 2 years. So if you think about like a general audience, if everybody's cards expiring every 2 years, every month, that's probably equates to roughly 5% of cards that you have on file would be expiring. And you can tell me if the math doesn't check out there, but what are some of the things you do around helping to ensure like cards are not expiring?
Well, most softwares have, and Stripe does, and CRM systems have the auto updaters. And so, when it comes to that, a lot of that's taken care of with just auto updates of the credit card through the software, and it takes care of it. If we have a customer that has annual subscriptions, which we love annual subscriptions, we've seen people do very well with annual subscriptions. Then we're able to help them with a pre-campaign to go out and look at the cards, a pre-annual subscription 60 days out, and look and say, hey, in 60 days, this card is coming due. And then we start a marketing campaign leading up to those to make sure that those cards are either updated, A, and B, that we let the people know that the charge is coming, because annual subscriptions decline at a way higher rate than a monthly subscription, just because the price point increases significantly. So that's what we do with that. That's what we do.
Interesting. So as well, the other thing you mentioned now in terms of like looking at yearly versus monthly, would be sort of like the rate of renewal, and then with the credit cards itself. So you say you typically see a higher rate of failure on yearly plans versus monthly when it comes to voluntary.
Significantly. And it's depending upon the price point. So what we found is anything that goes higher than an average car payment, the failures start to happen at a more significant rate. And so, an average car payment being, let's just say, $500 a month, anything over that, we see a significant spike. And so a lot of the annuals will be like, if it's a $99 a month thing, they'll give people an annual at $997. Those $997s fail. Let's just say the company is at 5% involuntary churn. It would not be unlikely for that to be 12 to 18% on the annual to fail. So we see anywhere from an 8 to 12 point increase with annuals.
Okay, wow. And then you mentioned the amount as well, sort of being a failure point. I think previously you also mentioned giving the option to pay like at 2 different intervals.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. How are you doing this? Because I think like for a lot of people to be able to start offering this kind of service, it would mean like changing the way billing works within the organization. Is there anything specific that you're doing that makes it easy for customers to be able to do this?
Are you talking about our clients or the clients' customers?
Your clients. So how are you able to enable your clients to charge their clients at different
Got it.
intervals? Yeah.
Yeah. So we do it for them. I mean, we're fully managed service on that side. So we don't have here's a piece of software, here's a hack on that, because everybody runs a different CRM and everybody has a different, whether it's Infusionsoft or whether they have, Salesforce or whatever their different CRMs and systems are. And so we have to customize that for each one of our clients. So I don't have like a specific thing that everybody can do.
Yeah. Okay. And then another thing I wanted to ask as well, I'm interested in terms of failures themselves, because I've heard this as well as an issue, and just seeing if it's something that's come up for you. Is it typically like another good reason for payment failures would be if it's a US bank account and
Yes.
it's a UK company charging, or vice versa, or it's this
Yes.
cross-border. How big of an issue is this, and what are some of the things you're doing to try to help your customers solve this?
It's huge. It is when we bring on, we have clients in UK and Australia and Canada. And when one of our sales guys, our sales ladies, bring one of these accounts through, I literally see our implementation people go like, "Oh crap!" It's like this. It's not that we can't do it. It's just that there's going to be a bunch of extra back and forth and work and all that kind of stuff to get this done, because there's a lot of our clients, like there's one that's in the UK and has most of his business is in the US, but he's charging to a UK account. And so there's a lot of manual, there's a lot of calling the bank, there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of just failure at checkout. And so a lot of the stuff that we do for those clients is like, we have one client that's in Canada and they do a big launch 2 times a year. And honestly, they launch and their subscription price is at $797. So we literally they launch and we're sitting there with a team of people that when those cards fail because it says that will not take the funds, we're instantly reaching out to those customers saying, "Hey, can we do PayPal? Or, hey, can we do this other option? Or hey, what can we do to get your card on file? Or can you try a different card?" And doing those different things. And so it's a lot of manual heavy lifting. And if you do have this situation, you better have somebody on it because you're losing a ton of money.
Yeah, I think what I've heard as well, some companies try to look at doing is having alternate payment providers that they use depending on jurisdiction and where the company is in order to sort of resolve this issue. But interesting just to see that you do see it as a big problem with some of your customers as well.
We do see it as a big problem. And the biggest problem has been obviously with the Australian banks. For some reason, I don't know the exact reason why, but with Australia, we've got some clients that have Australian banks trying to charge on a sales page here, and most of their clients are in the U.S. And man, they have a heck of a time at checkout. And so that's primarily where this happens. And then obviously subscriptions it happens, but at checkout is where we see the biggest issue.
Very interesting. I think that'd be a great way actually as well to segment the involuntary churn as well as looking by jurisdiction and seeing which countries you're having the highest churn rates, because of course it'd be a big indication that this could be an issue for you as well.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned some incredible numbers as well previously. I think it was 120% net MRR retention and 1.8% customer retention.
Yeah.
1.5, yeah. So talk us through a little bit about that. So let's start off with 120% net MRR retention. So obviously seeing some really, really good customer retention and expansion revenue coming through there. Like how have you managed to achieve these numbers? Like what are some of the key things that you've really, really focused on and doubled down on in order to get this solid retention right?
The number one, so this is my third business. And so it's one of those things that I just couldn't have known in one or two. And here's the thing that we talk about is how a customer comes in is how a customer goes out. So how a customer comes in is how a customer goes out. And so, for instance, if a customer comes in and they come in quick and they're like, hey, I just want this up and done. And so the entrepreneurs, so we call those quick start Quincy's in our company. That's the avatar. Just get it off my plate. I just want you to take it. I just want you to do it. Just let's get this off. Let's just go. That customer, that's how they'll leave. And it'll probably happen when you send them a bill 3 months from now. And they're like, whoa, I didn't know that. And so what we do with a quick start Quincy is that we slow them down and frustrate them on the front part of the process, because we're not going to let them in without a full deep dive understanding. And essentially what we tell them is all of the negative things that they're going to think 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 months later. So at month 6, we know the questions they're going to ask. And so we ask them those questions before they sign the contract. For instance, hey, if you're paying Gravy $4,000 a month for what we do, and you look at that and you go, well, I could just hire somebody. Well, then we go down that rabbit trail with that person on the front end and say, how are you going to think about that when you're sending us that amount of money every month? And then we listen to them, and we handle the back end objections on the front end. So that's one example with like a quick start Quincy personality. And so we spend a lot of time on the front end vetting for core value alignment and making sure that these people are going to fit. Another one of our avatars is Financial Frank. Financial Frank. So Financial Frank is going to be the CEO. They want a spreadsheet about, and then 4 tabs later, 4 different spreadsheets and 6 broke down things. And so in the sales process, what we do with them is we walk them through the microeconomics. So the entrepreneur only wants to know the macroeconomics, but the CFO type or the financial type want the microeconomics. So we walk them through the microeconomics, and we justify to them using logic and reason in the sales process, and they agree to the logic and reason before they jump over the fence. And so most of our retention happens on the front end, not on the back end.
Yeah, I love that as well, like how you've really got a good grasp of who your ideal customer is, and understanding as well, like in some cases, maybe adding additional friction. I think this is something we talked about in a previous episode with Indelina Dorfman from Segment, where what they actually found was most companies think of onboarding and the experience initially is trying to get people onboarded as fast as possible and to reduce sort of the different layers of friction. But by actually adding friction in some cases, you can really have a big benefit. And this is one of those things, really qualifying your customers and then knowing your customers inside and out. So how did you come about with these initial personas that you've put together, and what was the process look like in that?
Well, I came across the personas because, again, this is not my first rodeo. And so I knew coming in, I hate agencies and I hate outsourcing personally. I hate it. And we're an outsourced company. So I'm starting a company that I genuinely don't like. From the standpoint of most outsourced companies, you pay them and they get paid no matter what, regardless if they're successful or not for you or not. And so when we started this, we wanted to start it to say that we don't get paid unless our client gets paid first. So it's a win for the client, then a win for Gravy. So that's been another our proposition and the way we get paid is we don't make money unless the client makes money. And so we knew that. And then on the front end, I learned the hard way of getting on the sales call with let's just say it's the second command. So we deal with a lot of like second command, so COOs. And I would speak to them in the language of an entrepreneur, like all of this upside and possibilities, and you don't have to do this anymore. And all they wanted to know was, what does the technology map look like in the plugin? And I wouldn't speak to that, and we would lose the sale on the front end. I'm like, what's going on? And so we started to identify throughout our phone calls that we really have 5 different avatars that we sell to. And it was really just trial and error, frankly. And I would speak really well to the Quick Start Quincy because I am one. But then the Quick Start Quincy would come in 3 months, we'd have a problem with them. And so we just went through this process of learning, and we found that we work with 5 different types of avatars and we focus on those. And so that's how we came about learning it.
Very interesting. And definitely it's obviously the number one way is just speaking to customers, really understanding who they are.
And I will say this. I'm sorry to cut you off. So the reason that we're so like high in qualifying who we work with is that we're not an app. We are talking to their customers on behalf of them.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be a mutual respect and a mutual trust and understanding and all of that from the very beginning. And so what we believe is that sometimes when you slow things down on the front end, you can speed things up on the back end. And so some of our best clients have been some of the hardest people in the sales process because they answered every question. We got through all the trust barriers. And then by the time we were ready to rock and roll, it's like, okay, take off. And that's something that's highly unique about what we do.
For sure. And I can definitely see that sort of trust barrier being a huge one, because it really is a volatile moment as well that you're speaking to customers in. And to be able to trust a third party company to actually step in and speak on your behalf, there's got to be a lot of trust and credibility there in that decision taken. So
Totally.
So you're also like highlighting another thing as well, I think, is typically you're speaking to one person within an organization, and they would be the ones that you're selling into. How have you seen this sort of impact in the little churn that you do have when one of these people leaves? So when this customer champion that you've been speaking to and working with.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's huge. So if our point of contact, and so what happens in the way people buy with us is that the owner usually signs off at the end of the day on Gravy being a part. That's wonderful. However, if the team that we're going to work with, and let's say that we work in conjunction with customer success or customer support, but they were not sold in the sales process, it becomes a disaster instantly, because those people are like, who are these people? Why are they talking to me? What's this Slack channel? It's extra work for me, or any of that kind of stuff. And so number one is like getting everybody involved on the front end that's going to be affected. And then number two, on the back end, when those people leave, we literally have to start the sales process 100% all over again. It's literally a brand new sales process, period. And so we start over. We have to learn who they are. We have to win them over, build the trust, and they have to see the value of this in the business, or they will instantly come in and go, why are we doing this? We don't have to do this. And they come in, they want to be a hero. And a hero is, let's get rid of this and we can do some other way or whatever. And that's a big issue that we've had to deal with.
Yeah, it definitely is a big issue that we've brought up on the podcast. And it's interesting as well that it resonates with you so strongly, even though you do have really strong retention numbers.
Because some of the hardest things have been like, we've had great customers and we're like, what happened? Like, I'll get this upstream report and go, why is this person leaving? They're great and they love us, and the owner still loves us. But the owner or CEO brought a new head of operations or customer success or finance in, and it's kind of like people, they just want to bring in their own people or their own team or their own ideas or whatever. And it's like, crap, we lost some good business from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, there's also somebody coming in wanting to try and save some money or make a dent and show that they're worth. Like maybe one of the first places is looking at, okay, how can we cut costs? Is this something we can do ourselves? So the interesting I think as well, it sounds like you've got a real strong hold on, and you've seemed to have nailed this in terms of your pricing and how you price. So maybe you want to just talk us through that. Like, what is your value metric? How are you pricing? And how would this typically look like for a customer?
Yeah, so we made it a no-brainer to where 20% of Gravy's revenue will come from a small monthly management fee, very small, like just to get us, just to know that they're serious, right? But 80% of our revenue comes from success fee. And what that means is it's a commission. If let's just say somebody has a $100 subscription on, and the customer's on month 6, if we recover that customer for them, we get a cut off of that, a percentage. They get a cut. They usually keep the lion's share of that. We keep a minority cut most of the time. They keep a majority cut most of the time for month 1. So if it was a 40%, we would get $40. Our client would keep $60. But here's the most important part of all of this is that we keep nothing long-term. They keep all of the lifetime value of the customer. So essentially, we're like a back-end sales team for the business that we get a small cut, we get a kicker, and they get to keep all of the value of the customer, and they never have to pay us again on that customer.
That's very interesting. And I think as well, it aligns with something in terms of like a couple of the main reason I think companies, or the only reason why people end up churning, is when they're not receiving value. So if your product or service is not solving the problem, they end up leaving. And another factor, though, that does impact churn from time to time is obviously price. And when you put that on an axis as well, like people that are getting little value but paying a lot end up being the highest to churn, and those getting the most value and paying a little are the lowest to churn. But it sounds like you've managed to have a good scaling factor in terms of the price as well with the value received, which is ultimately where you want to be, is making sure that as the price scales, so does the value that the customers are receiving. So I think it's a really, really great value metric that you've landed on as well for your pricing strategy.
Yeah, my favorite thing about it is, like I said, I'm not a fan of outsourcing, and as we created this, monster outsourcing company, is I just love that what we do is black and white. Like, it's not like a logo that you can perceive one way or another. It's not like, how should we do customer success in general or whatever, or some marketing thing. This is like, we either ROI or we don't. And we are able to show the data real time all the time and show our clients, like, this is exactly what you got. This is what you've paid us. And the money is so lopsided. Like, it is so lopsided toward the customer. And we constantly, another tip that we've learned is we constantly are showing our client not just how much money we save them in a month, but we are adding up the LTV of how much money that they're getting to keep month after month after month that they don't have to pay us on. And so as that number continually grows in perpetuity, the number that they pay us, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller the longer that we work with the customer. So the most expensive time to work with us is at the very beginning, and the least expensive time is the longer you go. And so that makes it another thing where we're a decreasing cost percentage-wise instead of an increasing cost.
That's very interesting. And then I'm sure you get asked this question as well, but how are you taking into account sort of the natural reactivation rate of customers? So if you see that involuntary churn is typically, I think you mentioned it earlier, between 3 and 15% your typical customer, I'm sure a lot of those were receiving a fair amount of reactivation as a result, if it was a credit card failure or if it was credit card expiring, customers naturally doing it on their own. How are you measuring yourselves against the sort of the natural flow of users themselves?
Yeah, so we'll give sometimes we'll give a grace period to our customers that they don't want us to. They want, let's just say, they want to run their dunning emails for 2 days, or they want to retry the credit card or whatever, and we'll say, okay, here's the period. But then there's a period when that's over and we start. And then most of our customers say, just take over at day 0 and run all of the processes, because it's so much of it's a minor. They'll get, let's just say they got 15% of their customers back by automatic updating and automatic retry. It's such a small number that a lot of customers just say take over from day 0. It doesn't matter. But people that do want to do that, we allow them to do that and run any dunning process they want for a short period of time, because we're not a collections agency. We're not going to say, hey, run a dunning process for 30 days and then we start. We'd be like, heck no, we don't do that. Yeah. But if it's 3 days, or, hey, let me run this, thing for 48 hours, then we'll let them do that. But most of the time, you're going to get the lion's share of those easy ones back quick, and then it starts getting hard. And so by the time that customer is on day 17, well, that's not as easy as they were on day, or hour 1. And so we let customers do that a little bit, but it's not really that big of a deal for us.
Cool. So maybe last question, because I see we're actually running up on time quite now, is I asked this to everyone. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, Casey, now as well, third-time founder. Let's imagine you start a new job or you walk into a new client and you see that churn retention is really not great at this company, and you've been tasked to now try to turn things around. What would be some of the things that you would try to do in the first 90 days to deliver results for the company?
The very first thing I believe that I would do, and this is what we did in our last company, so I did it. I put my best leader on the biggest opportunity. And I think churn is one of the biggest opportunities companies have. So I would move my best leader. I don't care if they're the director of marketing. I don't care if they're the director of sales. I don't care if they're the ops or the finance. I don't care who they are. I'm just saying, if it's the person that you look at in your company and say, that person is a great leader and they get crap done, number one, I put this as their number one metric, and they are responsible for it no matter where they sit on their work chart. That's number one. Number two, I get visibility and clarity into the data. Most people, even people using these dashboards, like I'm not going to name names of softwares just because that's not cool, but all of the softwares that say they're showing churn dashboards, when we go in and we manually look at the data, like inside of Stripe, or manually look at the data and we're running spreadsheets and looking at it, most of the time the dashboards are wrong. And so I would get a clear 100% visual accurate dashboard of how much is failing, how much are we recovering, speed to recovery, transaction number, and transaction recovery. Those are the 5 things that I would have up on a dashboard on Clipfolio, on my phone as the CEO or the owner, and it would be on the front page of my Clipfolio, which that's what I did last time when we fixed this problem as well. So number 1, best leader. Number 2, clarity dashboard. And then number 3 is I would create a process that has a full-time focus attributed to it. Now, what I mean by that is the number one thing I see people fail at is that they add churn to somebody's already long to-do list. Oh, you need to call these customers too. Hey, you're in finance, do the bookkeeping, and then, oh, by the way, I need you to reach out to these customers that failed. Oh, by the way, you're in customer success, so you want to help people with success. Okay, yeah, but let me add this on this too. Or, hey, you're in sales. Well, win this customer back, so we're going to add this on you too. Never works well. I would have full-time dedicated people, either internally or externally. That's where we got the idea of Gravy to come from. Focused on this every single day, all day, and those 3 things. So that would be number 1, have the right person. Number 2, have the right dashboard. And number 3, have the right process with full-time people focused on it.
I love that. No need to summarize. I think you did an excellent job there. And we can end on that as well, Casey. I think excellent advice. Coming obviously from a wealth of experience building companies and now building Gravy. So thank you so much for joining the show today. For the listeners, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? One final thought? How can they keep up to date with you? And the
yeah, I would literally say our website is gravysolutions.io, gravysolutions.io. We simply do a discovery call. We get the data. And we don't buy it. So we'd love to talk with you and see if we can help you and help your business succeed. Andrew, thanks for having us. And thank you guys for listening on today's show.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day. And that's a wrap for the show today with me, Andrew Michael. I really hope you enjoyed it and you're able to pull out something valuable for your business. To keep up to date with CHURN.fm and be notified about new episodes, blog posts, and more, subscribe to our mailing list by visiting CHURN.fm. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have any feedback, good or bad, I would love to hear from you, and you can provide your blunt, direct feedback by sending it to andrew@churn.fm. Lastly, but most importantly, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it and leave a review, as it really helps get the word out and grow the community. Thanks again for listening. See you again next week.